Welcome to the beginning of the end of video game media, of video game websites and guides and bloggers and journalists and the whole nine yards. And to be honest, a lot of people have already been talking about this, but it's been such a dry conversation because they haven't been focusing it on the people that matter the most, which is you, the viewer. The one that's consuming that content to begin with, that's reading those articles, that are watching videos like this or looking up guides and hints and things like that. Instead, the conversation's been around people losing their jobs and layoffs and how hard it's going to be to compete against AI and the prevalence of AI taking over these jobs. And nobody cares. At the end of the day, we are selfish creatures that care about ourselves more than anything else, and we want to know how this affects us. And for the most part, most of us see this as, well, I can't trust these people to begin with. Get rid of these journalist losers. They've screwed me over more times than I can count. I don't blame you for saying that, but this does affect you. And to be honest, it's not good. Paul Tossi over at Forbes writes an article titled, IGN buys 4 major gaming sites as games journalism keeps spiraling. IGN Entertainment, owned by Ziff Davis, has now bought the entire gamer network of brands, which includes at least 4 of the highest profile gaming sites left alive in the space, and stakes in others. The purchase includes Eurogamer, GameIndustry.biz, Rock Paper Shotgun, and VG247. Then shares in Outside Xbox, Digital Foundry, Nintendo Life, Push Square, Pure Xbox, and Time Extension. The move has already resulted in significant redundancy layoffs of acclaimed journalists across the brands as they are absorbed into the megasite. While consolidation is generally not great in any industry, games journalism is especially struggling as moves like this are only going to make things worse. Mid-level or smaller sites are already fighting against YouTube and Twitch, and for visibility against YouTube's increasingly actively hostile search policies, which now include AI ripoffs of their articles as of last week. But now you have a site like IGN owning 5 major brands that can populate the entire link list for a given topic, in theory. And Paul's absolutely right by this, because if we go to Google and we search Summer Games Fest, in the first 10 results, we get Rock Paper Shotgun, VG247, Eurogamer, and VG Charts, all of them under this new IGN umbrella. Now, I think it's pretty obvious to see how bad of a thing this is, because that means that they have full reign and authority to be able to control whatever narrative that they want, because IGN was already the most viewed video game website on the internet. They were the biggest leader across the board. Now they own the other biggest leaders. There's not very many other ones that are out there, and they can just go ahead and buy those too if they really wanted to. And the problem with that is that they can make or break games or mislead us as they want to. And I know some people are going to probably sit there and say, dude, that doesn't matter. I watch YouTube videos. I watch Twitch streamers. I don't read any of these articles or anything like that. I don't trust IGN or Game Informer or Eurogamer or whoever. And while that's cool, realize that the vast majority of information that YouTubers, Twitch streamers, or whoever else gets is coming from these sources, because they have more connections and resources than we do, and we don't have the kind of ability to be able to go and talk to some of these developers and get insider information and be able to share it with other people. We have to get it from a source first, and now that source is being corrupted, which means the information that we're getting is also potentially at risk, and that's a problem. And while we can try to do our best to have journalistic integrity or video journalistic integrity, I don't exactly know how that works, but we'll try to do our due diligence. At the exact same time, there's going to be some situations in which we're going to be misinformed because these companies are controlling the narrative. And the other problem is that while what Paul says when he's talking about how Google's algorithm is actively hostile towards these brands, he's not wrong, by the way. This problem is getting worse, and it's not just the games journalism, it's also just AI and these websites in general, because if you guys have searched for anything lately on YouTube or searched for anything lately on Google, you'll notice that you're getting very curated results very quickly. And one of those things is that I haven't even had to look at any video game wikis anymore, because if I type into Google, hey, how do I get this one thing, or where do I farm this certain item or weapon or whatever it is, Google just straight up tells me without me ever having to even look at a wiki in the first place, which then drives the ad revenue down for those websites and then makes those websites not able to exist. And if those websites don't exist, then Google can't get the information to be able to display it to us. So it's a vicious cycle that's only going to get worse. Paul Tossi continues with, while this is the latest move, we have other smaller ones in the past. Fandom bought GameSpot. Giant Bomb, and even Metacritic, the all-important aggregator back in 2022. The Gamer Network, that's what they use so we know it's for gamers, has over a dozen publications including Destructoid, The Escapist, GamePer, and Twinfinite. There are some big-name sites that are relatively standalone, or at least the only gaming site in their network. Polygon seems to be the healthiest, perhaps, while something like Kotaku seems constantly on death's door with a skeleton staff that's trying to fight against its poor private equity management. Elsewhere, there are major brands like the New York Times and Forbes in the gaming space, covering the massive industry that make it harder for smaller sites to compete. But even there are problems. The Washington Post recently called almost its entire gaming vertical cut down to more or less one guy. Hi, Gene. Consolidation sucks in general, and he kind of brushes over it, but using Metacritic as a great example, when they were purchased by Fandom, I threw Metacritic out the window because I viewed it as compromised, because it's now owned by a company that owns video game publications and journalists that review games, and then they get to control and curate what those scores are, whose scores they include, what scores they don't, how those scores are tallied, and everything like that. And then they get to play whatever tune they want to get us to buy whatever they want us to buy. And I don't appreciate that. That's not something that I want. So I pretty much only use OpenCritic from time to time, Steam reviews, or the eye test and watch somebody else play it to see if it's something that I'm going to like playing. And that sucks because that means that there's less places for us to be able to get more information for us to make educated purchases. And obviously, if you guys have watched any of my videos in the past, that's something that I'm a big fan of. That one of the other things that Paul brings up, and he's talking about these bigger gaming sites or these bigger publications in general, and he's talking about, you know, the New York Times or Forbes. And what's really funny is with Paul's article specifically is anytime there's any big, huge gaming news, their website is almost always at the top, specifically because Forbes is such a high traffic site to begin with. It's a respected site. It's been around for many, many years, and it's used for all kinds of different things. And as such, it's going to be ranked higher in any search result. And what sucks about that is that when you start putting more and more of these publications, more of these higher end publications at the very top, then that means the smaller guys don't really have much of a voice. They end up dying as a result. And then now you're left with just a few opinions. And as these companies continue to lay off and get rid of people, well, that's a problem too, because now there's less voices and less types of opinions at these companies. And you're only getting, as an example with Forbes, you're only getting one or two guys' opinion, and they start sounding the exact same. He gives the example of another publication that really only has one guy. Again, now you only have one voice at that entire publication, and now you're starting to get a bit of an echo chamber across all of these companies, especially as they consolidate. That sucks. That's not good in general, because now we don't have access to the variety of opinions that we once had for us to be able to discern and come up with opinions of our own and make educated opinions as a result of that. If you look at any of your favorite YouTubers or Twitch streamers or whatever, one of the reasons why we have the ability to be able to come up with the opinions that we have is because we go through and we read a bunch of these articles, we watch a bunch of different videos, and we try to get as many different opinions as possible, as far to one side or the other, to try to find where we want to be in the middle. You know what I mean? But one of the other things that I have a problem with too, and he doesn't really bring this up, but I think it's going to be a really big issue, is that as more and more of this information becomes difficult to attain, it's going to make it difficult for new people to get involved in content creation, regardless of wherever it is. If it's YouTube, Twitch, on journalism or bloggers, whatever it might be. And the reason why I say that is because if gaming media continues to die off the way that it is, well, then YouTubers that have access to these developers and access to that information are going to be the only ones that can actually control that information. And everybody else just going to have to react to whatever they say. And that's just not something that's good, not in terms of the Google algorithm or YouTube algorithm, or just healthy for creators in general. And channels like mine, smaller channels like mine, wouldn't be able to exist if it wasn't for the fact that these publications and opinions have been around. Because if all of this information was being controlled by Skill Up and Gamer Ranks and, you know, IGN's YouTube channel and things like that, well, then I wouldn't have as much to deliver to you, because I wouldn't have as many opinions and variety of content to be able to look through and wade through and bring to you. Paul continues with something interesting, saying that there is a public war against the games journalists by, in part, the anti-woke crowd who believe that progressive-leaning outlets are going extinct because of allegedly activist takes. And there are also console fanboys who are constantly ripping outlets for allegedly favoring one piece of hardware over another, or lambasting them for inconsistent opinions across dozens of writers who have diverse viewpoints. In short, when you bring up the layoffs and general destruction of the industry, the reaction from gamers is often a disheartening, good, they deserve it. I'm gonna need you to pump the brakes there, Paul. See, I like being able to have access to a variety of different opinions. It gives me the opportunity to be able to contrast my perspective with the perspective of hundreds or thousands of other people, and allows me to be able to distill my opinion down to something that I think is educated and worthwhile. But with that said, we can't say allegedly activist takes when they are purely activist takes, purely pandering, purely virtue signaling more than anything else. Look at half of the dialogue that was around Stellar Blade or Baldur's Gate 3 at one point. How about the fact that Polygon put out an article talking about how Helldivers 2 was making people fascists? Come on, man. Look, I'm not going to sit here and cry, and I totally understand why people are cheering on the fact that some of these folks are losing their jobs and some of these publications are going out of business, because they have spent their time actively trying to pander to an audience that probably doesn't even exist. And if it does exist, they're not even interested in that content or in those games in the first place. And then beyond that, they're spending the rest of that time talking down to an audience that put them where they are in the first place. No, I'm not going to cry for them, nor should anybody else, because they're getting what they deserve for doing bad business. They compromised their own integrity. They compromised their own work, because I have to look through 7 or 8 layers of biases to be able to see what a rude opinion is anytime I'm reading any of those articles. Half of it is just there for engagement purposes, clickbaiting, and rage baiting more than anything else. Fuck them. Paul concludes the article with, "It's almost all bad news. Many former big names in the space either fled to PR, game development itself, or have fashioned their own independent entities like Kinda Funny Games or the recently formed Aftermath. Others have realized that you yourself sort of need to be a brand with a big social media presence, a paywalled newsletter, or your own YouTube/Twitch space to draw a consistent audience. This is essentially what I've done for the last 2 years especially. It's hard to see things getting any better. I feel for my colleagues who are enduring this sort of thing essentially every month at this point, and I feel like the recent Google AI push especially is a Mad Max dust storm on the horizon, poised to blow everyone away for good. God help us all." What I want you guys to take away from this is that there's a lot of different things that are going on, and there's some of these companies that wholeheartedly deserve to lose their business. There's journalists that are out there that totally deserve to not have a job. But at the exact same time, there's a huge group of guys that are out there and gals that have been working really hard to bring us great information in the best way they possibly can, that have been making quality content for years. And without them, we wouldn't have access to the things that we have access to. And if we don't have access to that, then we're not making educated purchases, and we don't know more about the games that we want to know about. And we play less games as a result of that, or we play worse games as a result of that. And I don't think that's what anybody really wants. But at the exact same time, this is something that is totally brought on by many of these companies that are out there, because they're the ones that have, they've compromised themselves time and time again. They've damaged their own reputation. I don't even know how many times, looking at websites like Kotaku or Polygon or even IGN in a lot of cases as well. And, you can't expect the players and the readers to be upset or try to fight for you when you fought against them time and time again. So this is one of those moments where it sucks to see some of them go away, and I don't like to see the industry continue to collapse upon itself like it is right now. But at the exact same time, like, some of it's totally deserved. But I think you want to try to do your best to, instead of directing it at the entire industry, direct it at the ones that you know are a problem, and then just keep it to that. And don't let it bleed over into anything else, because there's a ton of folks that are out there that I think are well worth keeping around. And I think it's great that they're trying to diversify a little bit. They're getting into YouTube content creation, or they're streaming, or whatever it might be. And that's great. But also at the same time, keep in mind that that means that these bigger publications are going to be doing the exact same thing. IGN's a really good example of this. If you go to IGN right now, I think I just looked yesterday, they post like 40 to 60 videos a day. And that drowns out a lot of other voices. because that is a lot of content that's coming out. And I'm talking about everything from big games to small games. And, you know, even specifically with small games, you know, they're really just throwing out trailers and whatnot. But without some of these smaller publications that are out there, that's honestly the only way that some of these indie games can even get their name out there, even just get on people's radar at all, because they don't have the money to be able to go to IGN Megacorp to be able to have them cover their game, and nor is IGN Megacorp interested in covering it because they're trying to maximize SEO because they want as many people visiting their website and viewing their YouTube videos as possible, and they recognize that little baby indie game is probably not going to get them all the clicks and all the views that they need to be able to make boatloads of money. So this is something that not only hurts us as consumers because we don't have access to as much information as we should, but also at the same time, it hurts indie developers that I know a lot of us are champions of. And that also sucks because that means that there's less games that are out there for us to play because we just can't find them. And it's just not good, man. It's not good. Yeah, even more so if you think about it, if we think that any of these companies will just make a full shift to just being like content creators instead, right? Like think if IGN just completely shut down all of their websites and just went straight to YouTube instead. They can pump out more content and have better access to information than any other YouTuber that's out there. And that means that like folks that are just trying to get started will probably never take off because they're never going to have that kind of access to information unless we're really trying to have the internet just be nothing but React channels. And while I appreciate some React content myself, I don't think that's the kind of website that I want to be on, and nor do I think that's what a lot of the content a lot of people want to watch either. So I don't know, man. Dark times ahead. That's all I can say. If I had to give any piece of advice, anything that I would want people to do, find publications and find people that you want to support and support them. Actively support them. Look at like Second Wind. Like say if you like, I've always really enjoyed Second Wind's content. Some of the stuff I don't agree with, some of the stuff I do, kind of goes back and forth. But with that said, I sub to them. I sub to their Patreon and stuff like that. And that's the best way to be able to support these folks because, well, if you don't, then they're not around. So that's it. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. I enjoyed covering this. It's nice to get back into like general industry topics. I haven't done this in a while. So, just kind of shaking off the rust a little bit. If you guys enjoyed this video, like the channel or like the video, subscribe to the channel. Follow me on Twitch if you guys want to catch me live. I talk about news and stuff like that before I play games every single day. Outside of that, my friends, stay cool, stay righteous, stay safe, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.
Family, family, family.